Ethan Carter adjusted his tie for the third time, his fingers gliding over the silk fabric with precision. Every movement was meticulously calculated, a way to stay in control on a day when everything felt like a gamble. The soft piano music floated through the cathedral, accompanied by the restrained murmur of the guests, seated on pews adorned with white lilies. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers and the aged wood of the altar, a scent that evoked promises and tradition. He took a deep breath, absorbing the familiar aroma, an anchor amidst the storm of anxiety swirling in his chest. It was the big day, the day he had promised, exactly 1 year ago, to marry Amelia, the woman who had given back something he thought he had lost forever: hope. Since the accident, his life had been a game of shadows and tactile memories. He couldn't see the grand altar in front of him, nor the stained glass windows casting colors onto the guests, but he could sense everything around him. He could imagine the sparkle in Amelia's eyes as she prepared to walk toward him. He could almost see the smile that he knew would be there, the smile that always seemed to radiate light even in the darkest hours. His heart skipped a beat. She was about to walk through the cathedral doors at any moment. A wave of nervousness shot down his spine. "Everything all right, Mr. Carter?" asked a gentle voice to his left. It was Father Donovan, who had led the rehearsal the night before. "Yes," Ethan replied firmly, even though he wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. "Just anxious." A warm, soft laugh came from the other end of the altar. It was his best man, Alex, who had known Ethan since their college days. Who wouldn't be, marrying Amelia? "It's like winning the lottery twice," Alex joked, trying to lighten the tension. Ethan smiled but didn't respond. He knew how lucky he was, but he also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on his chest. 2 months ago, he had made the riskiest decision of his life since the accident, an experimental surgery to try to regain his vision. He hadn't told anyone but Alex. Amelia didn't know. He didn't want to give her false hope. And now, just minutes away from the most important moment of his life, he wondered if he should have told her the truth. His thoughts were interrupted when the music changed. The gentle chords shifted into a wedding march, and the guests' murmurs ceased, replaced by a solemn, expectant silence. Amelia's entrance. Ethan straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath, his heart pounding wildly. He felt the weight of every gaze upon him, but all that mattered was the feeling of Amelia drawing near. The echo of her footsteps seemed to fill the entire cathedral. With each measured step, he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet, a drumbeat reverberating through his soul. He imagined how she must look, the lace dress she had described casually a few weeks ago, the delicate veil pinned to hair he had never seen but loved to touch. He wanted so badly to see her. He wanted the first time he saw his bride to be this moment, as she walked toward him, full of the grace and beauty he knew she possessed. A firm hand touched his shoulder. It was Alex. "She's almost here, Ethan," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The knot in Ethan's throat tightened. He tried to smile but felt his eyes burn. He extended his hand, waiting for Amelia to take it. Then he felt her fingers wrap around his. Her hand was cool, but the touch was unmistakable. He squeezed gently, conveying everything he couldn't say in words. "You look beautiful," he whispered, hoping his voice didn't betray his emotions. Amelia chuckled softly, a sweet, crystalline sound. "You always say that." "Because it's true." For a moment, the world seemed to shrink down to the touch of their hands. He wanted to freeze this moment forever, before any doubt, before any fear, just the two of them, and the promise they were about to make. "Are we ready?" Father Donovan's voice sounded gently, pulling them back to reality. Amelia took a deep breath. "Yes." Ethan nodded. "Yes." The priest began the ceremony, his words echoing through the cathedral. Ethan listened intently, but part of him drifted away, caught in a spiral of longing and fear. What if the surgery had worked? What if he could see Amelia today? And what if he never could? Each word from the priest seemed to blend with the questions in his mind. He felt Amelia tremble beside him and squeezed her hand tighter. He knew that no matter what happened, he loved her, and that was enough. But then, a sharp pain pierced his head. He inhaled deeply, trying to ignore it, but the pain intensified, radiating to his eyes. His eyelids clenched instinctively. A nearly unbearable pressure forced a low groan from his lips. Amelia turned to him, concerned. "Ethan, are you okay?" she whispered. He couldn't answer. Something was happening. The darkness he knew so well seemed to be dissolving slowly, giving way to something else. Shadows. Light. His heart raced. What was happening? The world around him seemed to spin. A wave of nausea and fear washed over him, but so did a spark of hope, so intense it almost hurt. And then, for the first time in 3 years, he saw light, blurred colors, blinding lights. His breath caught in his throat. The vision was still hazy, but he could see a figure in front of him. White, glowing like an angel. His heart nearly stopped. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice trembling. She squeezed his hand, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, Ethan. I'm here." The world spun again. He didn't know what was real or not, but in that moment, one thing was certain. He was about to see her for the first time. 3 years ago, Ethan Carter's world was a picture-perfect landscape, clear, vibrant, and full of possibility. He had it all: the sprawling empire he built from the ground up, the respect of his peers, and a lifestyle most could only dream of. But all that changed in the blink of an eye. It was supposed to be a routine visit to the site of a new skyscraper his company was developing. Ethan liked to be hands-on. He wasn't the type of CEO to sit behind a desk while the real work happened elsewhere. His team appreciated that about him. It built trust. He remembered the day clearly, even now. The sun was blazing overhead, glinting off the steel beams. Workers called out instructions. Machinery hummed and dust hung in the air like a shroud. He was reviewing blueprints with his project manager when a sharp, metallic groan sliced through the air. Everything that followed happened too fast. A snapping sound, a shout of warning, the rush of people scattering in panic. He barely had time to look up before the scaffolding above him gave way. A mass of twisted metal and debris came crashing down, and then darkness. When he woke up in the hospital, his head throbbed, and his body felt like it had been crushed. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the darkness remained, even when his eyes were wide open. The doctors' voices were hesitant, careful. "Optic nerve damage," they said. "There's a chance you might regain your vision, but it's unlikely. Unlikely." That word echoed in his mind for weeks. At first he thought he could beat it, that his stubbornness, the very quality that had driven him to success, would see him through. But stubbornness couldn't change biology. Reality set in like a lead weight. He was blind. His world was forever cloaked in shadow. Ethan shut himself off from everything and everyone. He stayed in his penthouse, curtains drawn, phone calls unanswered. Pity was unbearable, and no one knew how to speak to him without it dripping from their words. Until her. Amelia came into his life like a whisper of hope. He first heard her voice during one of the mandatory therapy sessions his company insisted he attend. He'd been sitting in the sterile room, counting the seconds until he could leave, when a gentle voice said, "I know it feels like the world ended, but sometimes when everything falls apart, you get a chance to rebuild something even stronger." He didn't reply. He didn't want a pep talk, but something about her voice stayed with him. It wasn't pity. It wasn't hollow encouragement. It was understanding. The next time he went to therapy, she was there again. She was a volunteer counselor, someone who had experienced loss and chose to help others heal. Over time, they talked. First about small things, the weather, the news, then about his frustrations, his fears, his grief. She listened without judgment, and she challenged him in ways no one else did. "You think your life is over because you can't see," she'd said once. "You can still feel, Ethan. You can still love. You just have to choose to live." It was Amelia who convinced him to step back into the world. She guided him through crowded streets, museums, and restaurants. She described things to him in vivid detail, but more than that, she taught him how to experience life through other senses. The scent of rain-soaked pavement, the warmth of sunlight on his face, the sound of waves crashing against rocks. He fell in love with her before he even realized it was happening. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline, she asked, "What's the one thing you miss seeing the most?" He hesitated. There were so many things. The colors of autumn leaves, the twinkling of city lights at night, the expressions on people's faces, but none of that seemed to matter anymore. "I wish I could see you," he admitted. There was a long pause. Then she took his hand and placed it on her face. "Then see me this way," she whispered. His fingers traced her features, the curve of her cheek, the arch of her brow, the line of her jaw. In that moment, He saw her more clearly than he ever had with his eyes. From that night on, their relationship deepened. Amelia became his rock, his partner, his reason to hope. When he proposed to her 6 months later, he didn't need to see her smile to know she was crying tears of joy. But as the wedding day approached, a seed of doubt took root. He wanted to give Amelia everything, and that included the possibility of seeing her face, if only once. The doctors had mentioned an experimental procedure, one with slim odds of success. He'd taken risks his whole life. This was just one more. He didn't tell Amelia. He couldn't bear to raise her hopes only to crush them. The surgery was grueling, and the recovery left him drained, but the results were inconclusive. The doctor said if his vision returned, it would happen gradually, unpredictably. Now standing at the altar with Amelia's hand in his, that gamble weighed heavily on his mind. He felt her shift beside him. The ceremony was in progress, the words flowing around him like a river he was barely aware of. His mind was a whirlwind of emotion. He wanted to be fully present, to savor every moment, but a voice inside him whispered, "What if today is the day? What if you can see her?" As if in response to his thoughts, a sharp pain pierced his skull. He flinched, his grip on Amelia's hand tightening involuntarily. "Ethan," she whispered, concern lacing her voice. The pain spread, searing through his temples behind his eyes. His breathing grew shallow. The darkness behind his eyelids seemed to ripple, shift. Then, like a curtain being drawn back, the shadows began to lighten. Shapes emerged, blurred and indistinct, but unmistakably real. A surge of panic and hope shot through him. Was this it? Was he finally seeing? Amelia's voice was a lifeline. "Ethan, talk to me. What's wrong?" He forced himself to speak through the wave of emotion. I think I can see you." Her breath caught. "What?" The shapes sharpened, and for the first time in 3 years, he saw her face. Soft, radiant, framed by a veil that shimmered in the light. Her eyes, warm and filled with love, locked onto his. Tears blurred his vision, but he didn't care. He was seeing her. Really seeing her. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice breaking. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The world around Ethan was a blur of colors, light, and motion. His heart thundered in his chest as he clutched Amelia's hand. It was overwhelming. The return of vision, however hazy and fleeting it seemed. After 3 years of darkness, this sudden burst of sight felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. He blinked rapidly, his eyes adjusting to the brilliance. Amelia's face swam into focus, a beautiful combination of softness and strength. Her chestnut hair shimmered beneath the veil, her wide eyes glistening with tears, and her lips were parted in shock. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice barely audible. He opened his mouth, but his voice faltered. The enormity of the moment was crushing. He had imagined this reunion 1,000 different ways, sometimes with relief, sometimes with joy. But this was different, raw, unexpected, and terrifying. The murmurs of the guests filled the cathedral, a backdrop of whispers and shifting feet. Father Donovan cleared his throat gently, his eyes flicking between the couple. "Is everything all right?" he asked softly. Ethan squeezed Amelia's hand. I can see you, Amelia." Her eyes widened even more, tears spilling down her cheeks. A tremulous smile broke across her face, shaky yet radiant. "You can see me?" He nodded, emotion clawing at his throat. "Yes, I can see you." A rush of joy surged through her. She launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around him. His arms closed around her, the world narrowing to just the two of them. The silk of her dress, the warmth of her body, the faint scent of roses in her hair, everything was amplified, each sensation more vivid than ever. A burst of applause erupted from the guests, and Ethan felt the pressure of all those eyes, but he didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt like a whole man again, and he was holding the woman who made that possible. As the applause died down, Amelia pulled back, her fingers brushing his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "This is a miracle, Ethan." He searched her face, memorizing every feature. "You're more beautiful than I ever imagined." Her cheeks flushed and she let out a choked laugh. "And you're just as handsome as I thought you'd be." He chuckled, a tear slipping down his cheek. But beneath the joy, a small seed of uncertainty sprouted. How long would this last? The doctors had warned him that the results of the surgery were unpredictable. Was this a fleeting gift or a permanent return? Father Donovan's calm voice interrupted their thoughts. "Shall we continue?" Ethan took a shaky breath, forcing the questions aside. He nodded. "Yes, let's finish this." They turned to face the altar, hands intertwined, hearts pounding. The ceremony resumed, the words of love, honor, and commitment weaving around them like a cocoon. Ethan's eyes never left Amelia. He drank in every detail, the way her eyelashes fluttered, the way her lips curved when she smiled, the way her eyes glowed with love and hope. When the time came to exchange vows, Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "With this ring," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I give you my heart, my soul, and my forever. No matter what happens, no matter what we face, I choose you. Always." Amelia's fingers tightened around his. "And I choose you, Ethan. Through light and darkness, joy and sorrow. You are my everything." A tear slipped down her cheek as she slid the ring onto his finger. Ethan's vision blurred, but he could still see the radiance in her eyes. It was perfect, everything they'd dreamed of. "By the power vested in me," Father Donovan announced, a smile spreading across his face, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled Amelia close and pressed his lips to hers, sealing their promise. The kiss was tender, filled with all the love, pain, and hope they had shared. The world erupted in applause and cheers, but they were lost in their own universe. As they pulled away, Ethan whispered, "I love you. I love you too," she murmured, her eyes shining. They turned to face the guests, who rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Rose petals rained down on them as they walked back down the aisle, hand in hand. The air was electric with joy, a celebration of love overcoming all odds. The reception was a blur of laughter, clinking glasses, and joyful tears. Ethan's vision remained, though it waxed and waned, sometimes sharp, sometimes hazy. He clung to each moment, afraid it might slip away. He and Amelia danced their first dance as husband and wife to the soft strains of a string quartet. She fit perfectly in his arms, her head resting against his chest. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. He nodded, his hand stroking her back. "I just don't want this to end." "It won't," she whispered. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." He closed his eyes, holding her tighter. Her faith was a beacon in the storm of uncertainty raging inside him, but even as they swayed to the music, a nagging sensation gnawed at him. The vision that had felt so clear earlier was beginning to waver. Shapes blurred, colors dulled. Panic flared in his chest. "No, not now. Please, not now." He forced a smile, not wanting to ruin the moment. "Let's go outside for some air." She nodded, concern flickering in her eyes. "Okay." They slipped away from the reception, stepping out onto a balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air brushed against their skin, the sounds of the party fading behind them. Ethan gripped the railing, his knuckles white. He blinked hard, willing his vision to clear, but the darkness was creeping back in. The lights of the city, the faint glow of stars, they were all fading. Amelia touched his arm gently. "Ethan?" He turned toward her, his heart breaking. Her face was a blur now, her features slipping away like a dream upon waking. I think it's going away," he choked out. She cupped his face in her hands, her thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled down his cheeks. "It's okay," she whispered. "We knew this might happen." He shook his head, his chest heaving. "I wanted to see you forever. I wanted to give you more." Her fingers tightened on his face, her voice steady. "You've given me everything that matters. Your heart, your love, your courage. Sight doesn't change any of that." He swallowed hard, the darkness swallowing his vision completely. But her presence, her warmth, her scent, the gentle pressure of her hands, anchored him. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I know," she said softly, "but we'll get through this, together." He took a shaky breath, leaning his forehead against hers. "Thank you for loving me." She smiled, though he couldn't see it. He felt it in the way she touched him, in the steady beat of her heart against his chest. Always. They stood there in the darkness, the world around them fading away. But in each other's arms, they found light, love, and a promise that no amount of darkness could ever break. The darkness was familiar, almost too familiar. It wrapped around Ethan like a suffocating shroud as he stood on the balcony, Amelia's steady hands cupping his face. He blinked rapidly, willing the faint blur of her form to come back into focus. But there was nothing, only the oppressive void he'd lived with for years. "It's gone," he murmured, his voice cracking with raw vulnerability. "I can't see you anymore." Amelia didn't hesitate. She pulled him into her arms, her warmth grounding him as his body trembled. She stroked his back with deliberate, soothing motions, her voice a gentle whisper against his ear. "Ethan, it doesn't matter. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." But it did matter, at least to him. For a brief, fleeting moment, he'd been given a glimpse of her. Her face, her smile, her eyes, full of love. He had seen the world again, bright and vivid. And now it was gone, leaving behind an ache he couldn't describe. "I wanted to see you," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "To see us. To hold on to that forever." Amelia pulled back slightly, her hands still resting on his shoulders. "Ethan, you did see me, and I saw you. Not just with your eyes, but with everything you've given me." She paused, searching for the right words. "What you saw tonight, that was a gift, but it doesn't change who we are or how much I love you." Ethan's head dropped, his forehead resting against hers. He could feel the steady rhythm of her breath, the subtle tremor in her hands that betrayed her own emotion. She was right. She always was. But the sense of loss was still overwhelming. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" he whispered, a weak smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Because I know you," she replied simply. "And I know that nothing can take this away from us. Not sight, not darkness, not anything." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly as though she might slip away too. For a long moment they stood there, their breaths mingling in the cool night air, the world beyond them forgotten. When they finally returned to the reception, the energy of the room shifted to envelop them. Guests rushed forward to congratulate the newlyweds, their smiles bright and genuine. Amelia handled the questions and well wishes with grace, deflecting any attention away from Ethan's sudden disappearance. Ethan, for his part, leaned into Amelia's strength. He shook hands, smiled, and even managed to laugh at Alex's terrible jokes. But all the while his mind churned with thoughts of what had happened on the balcony. The miracle of his sight's brief return, the joy of seeing Amelia, and the despair of losing it again. As the evening progressed, Amelia excused them from the dance floor, sensing Ethan's fatigue. They slipped away to a quiet corner of the venue, where a small table overlooked the shimmering city lights. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. He nodded, though he knew she could sense the hesitation in his movements. "I'm processing it. Everything. Seeing you was more than I ever thought I'd get. And losing it again feels—" He trailed off, struggling to find the words. "Like grief," Amelia finished for him. "It's okay to feel that. You don't have to hide it from me, Ethan." He exhaled sharply, his hand finding hers on the table. "I don't deserve you," he admitted. "You've given me so much, and I feel like I've only ever taken." She squeezed his hand firmly. "That's not true. You've given me love, faith, a reason to believe in miracles. And tonight you gave me a moment I'll carry in my heart forever." Ethan's throat tightened, but he nodded. He couldn't find the words to express how much her belief in him meant. As the reception wound down, the newlyweds said their goodbyes, thanking their friends and family for celebrating with them. By the time they climbed into the sleek car, waiting to whisk them away, the exhaustion of the day had fully settled in. The drive to their honeymoon suite was quiet, the gentle hum of the car lulling them into a sense of calm. Ethan's hand rested on Amelia's, their fingers entwined. Neither spoke, but the silence was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. When they arrived, the suite was everything they'd hoped for. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, the lights twinkling like stars. A bottle of champagne sat chilling on a marble table, and the room was adorned with rose petals and flickering candles. Amelia let out a soft laugh. "It's perfect." Ethan smiled, the sound of her laughter warming him. He reached for her hand, pulling her close. "You're perfect," he murmured, his lips brushing against her temple. She tilted her head up, her gaze meeting his. "We're perfect together." Their kiss was slow and tender, a culmination of everything they'd been through. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of the day's emotions finally began to lift. For the first time in hours, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. He lay still for a moment, his mind drifting in the hazy space between dreams and reality. He could feel Amelia's warmth beside him, her steady breathing a comfort. He opened his eyes out of habit, expecting nothing but darkness. But then, a flicker, light, shadows. The faint outline of the room began to take shape. His heart leapt in his chest. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice trembling. She stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open. "I can see," he said, his words rushing out. "It's back. My vision, it's back." She bolted upright, her eyes wide. "Ethan, are you serious?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "It's still blurry, but I can see you. I can see the room, I can see everything." Amelia threw her arms around him, her own tears falling freely. "This is a miracle," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I knew it wasn't over. I knew there was more to come." Ethan held her tightly, his heart swelling with gratitude. He didn't know how long his vision would last this time, but he wasn't going to waste a second of it. Over the following weeks, Ethan's vision continued to improve. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, amazed at the progress he'd made. For Ethan, every day was a gift, an opportunity to rediscover the world, and more importantly, to see Amelia in all her beauty. One evening, as they walked hand in hand along the beach near their home, Ethan paused, turning to face her. The setting sun bathed her in golden light, making her look almost ethereal. He took her hands in his gaze unwavering. "Amelia, I've spent so long living in the dark, and even though I hated it, it taught me something important." She tilted her head, her eyes searching his.